Welcome back to the Graham Stephan Show. So have you ever wondered why you feel so poor? Well, besides not having $10 million, CNBC decides to answer that exact question with this video titled, Why Americans Feel So Poor. So with that said, I want to comment on it as soon as you hit the like button and subscribe, because this brings up quite a few points that no one else is talking about. So with that said, thank you so much. Now let's begin.
The middle class was once a symbol of the American dream. But the American middle class today paints quite a different picture.
Being middle class, I feel like you're really just in between a rock and a hard place. You know, you're in a spot where everyone's like, hey, you're doing better than, low class. You're doing great. You should be fine. And you're underneath the people who are actually doing fine.
Now, I certainly don't want to discredit anything that they say, but in a way, I feel like we all compare ourselves with those who are doing better than us. So it's really hard to look at someone who's not doing as well and then think, wow, I'm doing great in comparison. You usually look at others who are doing slightly better, and then you feel worse in comparison. I just think that's human nature, unfortunately. Not to discredit anything that they have to say, certainly, but I'm just saying in general, we tend to compare ourselves with those who are better.
When people are asked about being middle class, they frequently are less likely to say so, and more people now urge the pollsters to suggest that they're working class. So I think that many people who maybe in prior years would have thought of themselves as middle class now no longer think of themselves that way.
It's interesting to turn the middle class into the working class. To me, that's like almost everybody. Unless you're retired, you are part of the working class. So I prefer saying low, middle, high, because that kind of gives you an income range versus working, non-working. I mean, what if someone's not working, but they're making $1 million a year, trading options? Does that qualify as work? I don't know.
One of the things that surprised me was the size of the middle class in the United States did not change.
Experts instead prefer the term squeeze.
Even if the middle class hasn't statistically shrunk, I do think that the middle class faces more in the way of pressures.
You know what? I would tend to agree with that wholeheartedly. I can't comment in terms of how many people are middle class today versus, 40 years ago. I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. But I do feel as though there are a lot of short-term pressures that right now are hitting a lot of people harder than it would have 10 years ago. Gas prices are a great example. Prices of groceries, just about everything has gone up an inordinate amount of money lately, just because there's been so much money printing. I mean, the cost of almost everything across the board is up almost 40% from 2020 through today. That's a lot. Incomes have not kept up with how much things have gone up in value or price.
What it takes to actually live a middle-class life is not what it once was. They're not necessarily able to pay their rent easily. If they're in their 30s, they may not feel comfortable having kids because they realize that having a child would be too expensive.
That would be interesting. Are birth rates declining today? And is that impacted by the amount of money the middle class is making? Let me look this up. Okay, so overall, it does look like birth rates have been going down, but they've been going down now for 5 decades. So we have quite a long time that birth rates are declining. It's yet to be seen how big of an issue that's going to be in the US over the next 100 years, because the fact is, if we don't have more people, what's going to happen to everything we build today? If we build all these extra homes, are those just going to go empty 50 years from now when, no one my age is having kids anymore and the population is shrinking? What's going to happen? Is it better to allow more people to come into the U.S. to fill that void? I don't know.
Meet Chantel Jacob. Chantel lives in suburban Texas with her husband and 1 child. And while a household income of just over $100,000 should put her family in the middle income tier, she says that her family is still struggling toward financial stability.
That's crazy. $160,000 a year is still considered middle income. To me, that's like upper middle. I don't know. 160 grand a year seems like a lot of money. But I guess if you're in a really high cost of living city like maybe Los Angeles, San Francisco, Manhattan, maybe 160 grand a year after tax. Yeah, you're looking about 110. I guess if you have a family of 4, if you're supporting kids, I could see how it would be tight, but overall, 160 grand to me seems like upper middle.
Our rent's about $1,700. Electricity is about $150. Phone bill's about $280. Internet $60. We both have vehicles. Those are about $800. Insurance on those vehicles is about $400.
Yeah, see, that's the first problem I see right here. They're spending $1,200 a month on cars. Come on. I don't get the obsession with driving nice cars. I truly don't understand it. Yeah, when I was 16, I thought it'd be so cool to drive a convertible Ford Mustang that was black with a red interior. I wanted that. It was my dream car. But you know what? As you get older and you start realizing, oh, cars are money pits. They sink money. So why? It doesn't make sense. If you don't need a car to show off to clients and try to get sales from it, you know what? Just get the cheapest car that you can that's reliable, that's good on gas, that's affordable. I think used Toyota Camrys, Corollas, Honda Accords, like these cars, buy them 10 to 12 grand, drive them until you can't drive them anymore. Insurance is going to go down, repairs are going to go down, gas is going to go down. To me, as soon as I hear $1,200 a month in cars on their budget, no, don't do that.
Between 1970 and 2018, the middle class share of aggregate income fell by 19% in the US. In comparison, the share of aggregate income for upper income households saw a rise of 19%.
You know why? It's the internet. It's very concentrated right now in terms of who's going well. It's the way I see it is that if you're doing well and you have a business that's very scalable, your income's going to go up a lot. Versus if you're in any other job where you have to physically show up every day, plug the numbers 9 to 5. The reality is that incomes they have not kept up. So wealth overall is a little bit more concentrated than what it was in the past, but this could also be skewed by the people who are doing really, really, really well with the internet, like Facebook, Amazon, Tesla. Like these companies could skew some of these averages.
If I stay at a company for a while, my income becomes stagnant. It increases by a couple thousand. I generally have to job hop to have increases in my income, which in itself is not security.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Job hoppers overall end up making about 50% more than people that stay at the same company for more than about 2 to 3 years. Go and look this up. It's a real study. Job hoppers make more money if you switch every 2 to 3 years. Okay? That's just the evidence. Yes, it does create slightly less job security, but if you're getting paid 50% more, that's your security right there. You could save an extra 50% more. That to me is very much security. The fact is that with a lot of these companies, they just give you a raise based on what you're already earning. So once they start you at $50K a year, they're not going to raise you more than a few percent of that. Versus if you started another company, they could pay you 70 grand a year, and then you get raised on that. And then once you're making 70, you could try to jump for 90 and then 110. So overall, it's worth it to stay good in the marketplace. Keep your skills at the top level, continue learning, and see what your options are. Make sure you're getting paid fair market value for your skills.
The average household income in the US saw just a 16% increase over the last 50 years. In comparison, housing costs increased by 190%, and college tuition shot up by nearly 264% in the same time period.
This is why it's so important to think outside of the box here. Just realizing that college is not the right choice to make in every situation, boom, you could save a ton of money right there. Going into trades, that's something I think should be coming back in popularity. I think plumbers, electricians, things like this. The other part of this that's worth considering though is that a lot of this, in my opinion, why the rich are getting so rich is because of low interest rates. The people that have the discretionary income in order to invest are making massive returns on their money because interest rates were so low for such a long time, so much money flowed into the markets, that boosted up all their income. Okay? It's the fact of the matter. If you invest, you're going to get some of that benefit as well. So yet to be seen if that'll continue though.
An analysis in 2018 found that raising a family and a middle-class lifestyle in expensive coastal cities like San Francisco or New York needs an income of at least $300,000 a year.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you? See, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Manhattan, those are cities. It's just so expensive. $300,000 a year though. Depends where, if they're counting in like private school tuition and stuff like that, which might be better than some of the public school system. I don't know. But $300,000 a year, it seems like a lot.
I feel like native people are being pushed out to the suburbs, and then people from out of state can come in and enjoy the beautiful fruits of Dallas. I have to live out here, and it's not bad, but it's not Dallas. I'm from Dallas. I grew up there. That's where I want to be. But how it is now, it's just not affordable.
Yeah, Yeah, see, you gotta blame, I know I'm part of the problem on this. I was like, you gotta blame California and New York. It's a lot of the reason, okay, I'll tell you. High state income tax, that's a problem. And then the $10,000 SALT cap deduction. So that went into effect, I think it was 2017, through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And that basically said that you could only deduct up to $10,000 of state and local taxes against your income. Prior to that, if you're paying a 13.3% California state income tax and 20 grand a year in property tax, you could deduct all of that off your federal income taxes, so you're not going to be double taxed there. But they claim no. Why should the federal government subsidize high income tax states who are wasting your money? And it became a bit of a, red versus blue state sort of thing, because the blue states generally had higher state income tax than the red states. It's really what it became. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of these people who have no opinion on politics whatsoever end up seeing these huge tax bills. So what do? They say, well, I'm going to move from California to now Texas. And I'm not going to have any state income tax. And it's not going to be a problem. Yeah, you have higher property taxes, but so what? You're saving so much money in the state tax side. And then it's driving up the prices in these places. So that's the reality of the situation.
The $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill from November 2021 and the upcoming Build Back Better Act both include provisions aimed at financially supporting middle-income families. Only time will tell whether these bills would really have an impact on the survival of middle-income households.
Yeah, I don't trust anything, okay? Anytime the government says, oh yeah, we're gonna help, what have they done? Let's be real here. Really, what have they done? It's a giant mess. Almost everything they do is just roadblocks and hurdles and money pouring, wasting money. And then it's taxpayer money. And they should have nothing to show for it. A lot of these incentives, I just think, why bother? Why not just lower taxes for everyone? Let the people decide where the money's going to go. Have like local initiatives where people, audit themselves. They'll really go and say, where is the money being spent? How long is this realistically going to take? Are we going to have any problems? There's a lot of these things I just think are big money wasters.
In June 2022, American workers made an average of $27.45 per hour. In 1972, the same workers earned an average of $3.88 per hour. But when adjusted for inflation, wages have remained virtually unchanged over the last 50 years.
That's a big one. You always have to account for inflation. What is inflation doing? If you get a raise for 10%, but inflation's 11%, then you're losing money. So something like this to me is very telling.
Wages in America have stagnated since the early 1970s. Between 1979 and 2020, workers' wages grew by 17.5%, while productivity grew over 3 times as fast at 61.8%.
But some of this, I think, is the invention of the internet, right? Like, if a worker doesn't need any more to type in manual data entry for 12 hours and they could just, have a computer program do like 90% of it, it makes sense that computers and things like this, a lot of automation would increase productivity without necessarily increasing time spent on that task. So I don't know, productivity growth makes sense. I kind of understand that.
Over the next 2 or 3 decades, a lot of economists believe that there's going to be a lot of disruption in the labor market because of new automation. Counting and even some parts of medical diagnoses will be done by machines with artificial intelligence. So a lot more of us might be facing that competition.
I completely agree. This is why Andrew Yang was very big on universal basic income, which the more research I'm doing, listen, I'm not an expert on this by any means. I have looked into the surface arguments of it, but it does seem like it would be a nice program if you could eliminate a lot of other wasteful government spending and programs that are out there that I think are very inefficient. Like, for example, you might spend $1 to allow the beneficiary to get 20 cents. It's like, why would you waste 80 cents giving 20 cents? It's just streamline it. Get them the full $1 if you're going to spend the $1. But, they'll argue that, oh, well, it's good for the economy because we could spend money to these people and these people get some, and it trickles down. I think if you could eliminate all of it, streamline things, make it more efficient, give people a flat amount every single month, that could help, okay? I'm just saying, it could help. I got to do more research on it though. But that will help also with automation.
Companies can also play a direct role in stifling the competition with methods like non-compete agreements. Roughly half of private sector US businesses that responded to the EPI survey said at least some of their employees are in non-compete agreements.
I kind of understand that though. Let's just say you're working for a company that's creating computer programs, okay? Just as an example. They want to make sure that another company is not going to poach them and say, hey, we also make computer programs. Just come to us and then help us out. I kind of get it, but it does limit where people can move afterwards. Something to take into consideration, but I understand the methodology behind it.
Some suggest that wage stagnation is an issue blown way out of proportion.
When you apply PCE to nominal wage growth, you discover much higher wage growth for middle income workers. In other words, no wage stagnation at all.
See, it's really hard to figure out who to believe on this because there are two sides to every story. You hear the one narrative, you hear the other. I tend to believe the truth is usually somewhere in between those, but the issue that I see is that you could cherry pick almost whatever data that you want to, and then that'll reaffirm whatever narrative you want to go forward with. That's the issue. It's like if you want to say inflation is non-existent, all you have to do is take out housing. If you remove housing from inflation, where people are already locked into their payments, then you could say, well, technically, inflation doesn't exist anymore, which is true. It's really housing and oil that are driving up inflation right now. Everything else is, for the most part, leveled off year over year. But when you include those two things, yeah, it's high. So it just depends on how you view things.
I think we also really need to embrace more of the gig market, which so far I feel like we're trying to sort of pretend doesn't exist. But I said if we sort of allow those platforms to offer health insurance, then I think it could become better quality jobs that are more dynamic and let people get more of the upside risk and not just the downsides.
Yeah, but then the downside of that, let's just say, pay them more, give them health insurance. I understand, okay? But as a 1099 contractor for a long time, if you did that, the realistic outcome is that prices are going to skyrocket to the point that businesses will begin laying people off because there's going to be no financial incentive to continue running at the same trajectory. So a lot of these gig workers, people want to do on the side, part-time, on their own hours. So by making them W-2 or giving health care, it really throws a wrench in the plan of a lot of these things. Prices are going to be going up. I think it's going to do more harm than good. Even though the intention, I think, it's a good intention. It's just, realistically, it's probably not the best.
$16.15 trillion. That is how much debt American households owed by the second quarter of 2022. A staggering 41.79% increase from $11.39 trillion just 10 years prior.
Yeah, but see, again, you have to go adjust for inflation. Yes, it's gone up a little bit, but it's no higher than it was back in 2018. So if you take inflation into this, it's not as bad as it seems, but it's slightly higher. But see, again, it's the narrative thing. They show this here, and they say, look how much it's gone up. But they don't do the same calculations that they did earlier where they accounted for, inflation. So I'm just saying, it's interesting.
43% of Americans are expected to add even more debt within the next 6 months.
And it's that juggling effect, right? Do I pay off this debt or do I go get groceries or go get gas, the things that I need to actually live?
It's really unfortunate that we live in a debt-driven society. I can understand for large purchases, I think a car, a mortgage, things like this, necessities that you have to finance because the cost is so big. I understand that. But I would say normal everyday expenses, putting on credit cards, it's a shame. Student loans, that's a ton of money. It's just that people get so used to borrowing money because that's what everyone's doing. It's what everyone encourages people to do. I'm going on these websites now and everything is just buy now, pay later. They make it so easy for people to fall into debt. I think it's terrible.
With college education going up and up and up and up and up, it's the difference between spending a few $1,000s, right? And a few tens of thousands of dollars. You get a law degree, you get a doctor's degree. Now the debt levels are even larger.
But why pursue these things? I don't understand it. I think community college, underrated. If you're going to go to college, if you've decided the career that you want to get into requires a college degree, that's the only way to get it, community college for 2 years, and then a good state school after that, try to get in with as little tuition as possible. If you get accepted to a more expensive school, you gotta weigh the pros and cons of that. Is it really worth it? Probably not. MBAs, I think, are kind of the same way. I've heard that unless you go to a top 3 or 4 school, it's usually not worth it. The ROI is just not there. I think people really have to evaluate. Are you spending money as an investment to make more? How much more are you making? How much easier is it going to be to get a job? If it's not going to help, don't do it.
The fact that households are going into debt in order to keep the economy going means that the ratio of their debt to their income is going up. And if they can't repay that debt, nobody will lend them more money. And that's when economies go into recessions.
Yeah, I really think it's only a matter of time until this eventually will have to come to a head. Something is going to have to happen. Are they going to lower rates? Are they going to print more money? The endless amount of borrowing is not stopping. It's not going away. So how much longer can this continue? And that's the question. Are you going to bet against it, or are you going to think that the government's going to find a way to bail them out? I tend to think the government will find a way, they'll print more money, they'll do whatever it takes.
Experts say outdated procedures such as wage garnishment are in dire need of a policy update.
Currently at the federal level, only $217.50 is protected in someone's weekly paycheck. And that bill hasn't been updated since the late 60s.
I tend to agree with that. The wage garnishment system makes no sense. The fact that you protect under $300 a week from your wages being garnished, come on. That should always be indexed to inflation. A lot of these, like even the Roth IRA contributions, index them to inflation. 401k index to inflation. A lot of these things. Even investor losses. Like right now, you could only write up to $3,000 a year in investment losses against your income. But it should be way higher than that, given inflation and the things from when it was first went into effect. So that's something as well I agree should be way higher.
More than 80% of Americans ages 18 to 43 said money is a significant source of stress for them.
Certain individuals are struggling more when it comes to concerns about inflation and money.
See, but the 80% figure I think is going to be pretty common throughout almost any income bracket. Like, I think, as unpopular as it might be to say, people making $1 million a year are also going to be concerned about their income just as much as someone making $200,000 a year. It might not be to the same extent as $30,000 to $40,000 a year, but from what I've seen, no matter how much money you make, the worry tends to stay the exact same as long as you make over, I don't know, maybe 70 grand a year. The worry's going to be there no matter what, at the same level.
It's also important to monitor your physical health.
What is happening to us mentally, it affects us physically also. If you're not treating your depression and anxiety well, you are probably not doing a great job managing blood pressure and diabetes.
I tend to agree with this completely. I think taking care of your health is probably one of the most important things that you could do. And the best part about all of this is that going for a walk, going for a run, standing up every now and then, going outside, like all of these things are free. And so even just taking a 30-minute walk a day, putting in your headphones, listening to a podcast, listening to music, whatever, making phone calls to people, I think are so important. And that doesn't cost you anything, and it's going to help your well-being a ton.
The concept in mental health recovery is that a first step is building hope. We need to see that there's a path to recovery and that things will get better. And they usually do.
So let me know what you guys think and what you're experiencing down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, and don't forget that you can get some free stocks worth all the way up to a few $1,000s when you make any deposit using a paid affiliate link down below in the description. Enjoy that. Let me know which stocks you get. Thank you so much, and until next time.